Ooh, look at this. This is Nevada. You probably can't tell because, well, a lot of the western part of the US looks like this. It's still a wide open frontier out here, and it just might stay like this for a long time, because look at the place. But the western portion of our country isn't just hot deserts with scorpions and tumbleweeds. Lots of it's filled to the brim with too many people. Many are large families who have lived here for generations. Lots are immigrants. Some are people who just moved here from other states looking for a better life. But how do you know where to go? Like, which state out this way is better than the other? Or, to put it even more clickbaity, which western states are the worst? That's what we're here to determine today. We're going to measure things like data and compare stereotypes so you, the ever-shrewd viewer, are more informed. Or, if you live out west, this is something you can brag about or use to email me and call me names. So get out your tank tops, and no, you can't borrow my lighter. We're going to rank the western states and tell you which one's the worst. West Coast is sandy, and mountains and beaches, and women who don't want to shave. There are some cowboys and even some rednecks, but most of the people are crazed. I'm Nick. I'm from Southern California. This is my sidekick, Mappy. He's a dweeb. The whole country opened up to me the day I left my home and said, "California sucks." Anyways, I know a lot about the western part of the country. Kinda. Sorta. So this should be fun, because the western US has a lot to talk about. Much of it is troubled. But if we're going to rank the worst and best states out west, we have to know which states are out west. These are the 11 states that can be considered the western US, and we're not including Alaska and Hawaii because those don't count. What we'll do is, we'll pit these 11 states against one another in a bunch of unbiased metrics, mostly, and see once and for all which state's the worst and which one's the best. We'll keep track on this handy-dandy scorecard. Let's begin with crime. That's an easy one. There's all sorts of websites which give you crime numbers, ranging from thefts and robberies to much more serious stuff, like this one. On the map, you can clearly see which western US states are worse for crime. New Mexico actually leads the nation in property crime and is second in violent crime, which is so sad. Idaho and Wyoming are clearly the safest states, and Utah is too. So we can then do our first ranking based on crime, and you can see the leaderboard here. Note that the lower the number, the better. New Mexico finished 11th on that, so its average is 11. See how easy that is? Worst at the top, New Mexico. Best at the bottom, Idaho. I only ranked it worst to best because that's how you people seem to like things, everything in a negative way, because you're weird. Now let's measure economics. We're going to take a look at two different metrics. First off, we'll look at cost of living in terms of how much money people make versus the cost to buy a home and everyday expenses like groceries and gasoline. Here's a map which shows us just that. To no surprise, California is the most expensive state of all, and Colorado is getting more expensive by the day, as word's out about how great that state is. Also of note is that a lot of people are leaving California to go to Colorado, driving up the cost of living there. Joke's on you, Colorado! Anyways, when we run our rankings again based on this, we can see that Colorado is the early leader as the worst state to live out west, followed by California. Remember, you want a lower score, and Wyoming is both safe and cheap, people. But what about taxes? Well, if you live in New York, you hate life, since that's the worst state for total taxes when you take into account property taxes and income taxes. Our worst state in the West, though, is California, which has an effective 9.27 tax rate. No surprises there. And it's not even close. You have to go all the way down to Utah and New Mexico to get to the next bad tax states, and they're way down the list. Our best state out west for taxes is Montana, which has very low property and income taxes. Idaho's not too far behind. Nevada has no income tax, but they hit you hard on sales tax there. And now California has taken over the lead as the worst state in the West. And it gets even better. Hey, look at Wyoming. Dang! Now what about some West Coast stereotypes? Meaning, what things can we measure that have to do with living out west? We're not measuring which states are legal or not, because this is a family-friendly channel. But there are 3 other things people say about our western neighbors. They're laid-back health nuts, and they live with earthquakes. We can measure all of those, people. Health-wise, that's super easy. There's a bunch of websites which talk about which states are the healthiest and which are not. One official-looking report brought to you by the United Health Foundation, and no, they didn't pay me for this, although that would be nice, puts our state rankings here, with Hawaii being our healthiest state, and Louisiana and Mississippi our unhealthiest. In terms of the states we care about, Utah is the healthiest, and Nevada is the unhealthiest. There's actually websites which measure stress levels, meaning we can analyze which states are the most stressed out and which are the most laid back. Several states in the South are stressed out, as measured by money-related issues and family problems and work-related stresses. California people are pretty stressed out when you measure those things, and Utah and Montana folks seem to be chilling like a villain, meaning they are more financially stable and live in a relatively safe part of the country. I'd probably argue Oregon and Washington should be higher on this list, considering all the crap they're dealing with in Portland and Seattle, but alas. What about earthquakes? Of course, the states with the most earthquakes would be worse, although they are pretty fun as long as your house doesn't crash down on you. Here's a list of states ranked by large earthquakes, and you'll notice that all of them are out west because they have more fault lines. It's science, people. Wyoming only ranks 7th, but they have to deal with the inevitable Yellowstone supervolcano that's going to blow its stack one day. Scientists say that might wipe this whole state right off the map. Anyways, Alaska has way more earthquakes than anyone else, and that's not a surprise. But while researching this important topic, I came across an article that said Oklahoma actually has way more earthquakes than even Alaska. These little mini quakes are being caused by all the fracking that's going on here. So after rerunning our rankings based on laid-back vibes and healthcare and earthquakes, it's pretty clear. California is definitely barely winning this. And Colorado moved up a little bit too. And we're starting to get deep into our rankings. Now let's look at crowds and traffic. Which western states are the most crowded and which have the worst traffic? We'll combine those two into our too many people metric. This chart shows us which states are the most densely populated. New Jersey is like the most densely populated place on the planet. California is our most densely populated state out west, and states like Wyoming, Montana, and New Mexico are clearly not densely populated, so good for them, but I'm sure there's lots of people fleeing chaos to head for the hills in these areas. But hey, look at New Mexico. They got a top 3 for something. Now what about traffic? As you might be aware, it sure ain't fun driving in California, pal. Look at all those cars. That's every freeway in the LA area from 4 a.m. until 3 a.m. the next day. Wyoming hardly has any traffic because there's hardly anyone there. Now, which state has the nicest people? Now, there's this whole stereotype that people out west are sort of downright rude and snobby, and some are outright hospitable and American. Let's find out. Well, somebody actually ranked this. It's based on tens of thousands of travelers' opinions. They asked them which states have rude people and which don't. New York ranks last for friendliest. That seems right, although New Yorkers are just direct more than anything. Washington ranks as our rudest western state, where people are called polite but unfriendly. Nevadans are also deemed rude. Our nicest western states are Wyoming, Colorado, and Idaho, at least to each other. Move there and you might get a cold shoulder unless you're a decent person, which most of us are. What about things to do? Now we're going to make a decision that will measure 4 things that are relevant to the West Coast: beaches, number of national parks, hiking, and skiing. That's pretty Western. Certainly, only 3 states have beaches, so they'll do well on that part. California leads the way in national parks by a long shot, and apparently Idaho has 0 national parks? What the? Better get on that and protect your land, Idahoans, because people that don't share your values are coming your way. Colorado ranks first in hiking and in skiing. In fact, the western states dominate both lists for hiking and skiing, and that's not a surprise. New Mexico ranks last out west for both hiking and skiing. Washington and Utah also scored well in outdoor metrics. After looking at things to do, it's clear California has way more to do out west, as do Colorado and Washington. New Mexico ain't got nothing going on, except a bunch of stargazing, if that's your thing. Uh-oh, we have a new leader for the worst of the West. It's gonna be close. Let's measure a couple more things. What about protests? Like dangerous ones where people are all out of control? Nobody wants that. So what we'll do is we'll penalize the states with the out of control people. That means California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado all get demoted a bit. A few more. Of course, jobs are important, so we can tell you which states have the highest and lowest unemployment rates. Currently, Kentucky has it best job-wise. In terms of our western states, Utah and Idaho are doing pretty good. Nevada and California are not. Massachusetts has a 17% unemployment rate. Damn! If you wanted to measure the quality of public schools, we can do that too, mister. Some states clearly have better instruction when it comes to teacher-to-student ratios, test scores, and graduation rates. Massachusetts has the nation's finest public schools, even though they're all apparently out of work right now. Washington has some great schools, apparently. Utah does too. New Mexico and Nevada have the worst schools of the West. New Mexico ranks dead last in pre-college scoring metrics. Hey look, a two-way tie for the best state to live out west. We have to break the tie, right? Now, we try to use weather to measure which western states are better or worse, and based on this report, many of the western states have pretty good weather. But really, the only difference is Oregon and Washington get a lot of rain, and states way up here get harsher winters, and a lot of states don't get any rain. All of those kind of outweighed themselves, so the only way to really break the tie was to look at, well, which states are people moving to and from? Meaning, if more people are coming than going, that's a sign the state's a better place to live, at least for now. So the grand conclusion, after digging through countless stories and charts like these, is that Idaho, Nevada, and Utah are places with the highest inbound populations. In fact, much of the West is seeing a huge population increase due to people getting the hell out of Dodge. And that means Utah breaks the tie and can thusly be considered the best state in the West where you can live, people. And that also means California is the worst state you can live out west. I'm totally happy with that. And look, it's a tie. Washington and Oregon are lousy places and are barely, just barely, better places to live than New Mexico, which is hilarious. Folks, that turned out about as absolutely the best way I could have envisioned. Except I would have thought New Mexico would have been second worst and Colorado could be considered a little bit better than some of the frontier states. But wow, that's it. If you need to move out west, pick Utah or anywhere east of Nevada except New Mexico. So that's it, our rankings of the worst western states where you can live. I hope you learned something. I sure did. That was fun. We should do the upper northeast. That'd be controversial. Anyways, if you're considering moving out west, hopefully this gave you something to ponder. And if you already live out west, then now you know where you stand or where you could move. Sorry, Utah. The West Coast. The West Side. So majestic, out in these hills. So many people, so many thrills. The West Coast is sandy, and mountains and beaches, and women who don't want to shave. There are some cowboys and even some rednecks, but most of the people are crazed. Arizona, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington, California, and Nevada, and Utah for you. Incredible people, but plenty of cheap ones, and so many places gone wrong. There are still places where you can still stay, but lots of these states are long gone. West Coast. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great! You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also now buy my songs on iTunes and other formats. Click the link in the description. While we all might have different views, we should all be nice to each other and try to make the US a better place in a positive way.